Hello everybody, this is Nahaz, and you guys haven't heard from me a lot lately. I have not had as much time as I would have liked to produce these kinds of videos. We are going to restart Stats Don't Lie and Esports Economist here in 2018, but for now, I thought I would do something a little bit different. As many of you know, I am a career academic. I was a professor for almost 20 years at the University of Chicago and University of Western Ontario, where I taught undergraduates, I taught MBA students, mostly at Chicago, and for a period of time at Western, I ran my own master's degree program in financial economics. And I've just recently transitioned to doing some more full-time work in esports, both broadcasting, freelance consulting, and a number of other business opportunities. And I get asked a lot, so starting with my undergraduates when I first started working Dota 2 LAN events in 2015, and on to people now that follow me on Twitter and other platforms, send me emails, I get asked, I want to work in esports, what should I do? And I'm going to answer that question as best I can in this video. First of all, I want to work in esports is just not a very useful statement. If I'm your career advisor, it's roughly the same thing as telling me I want to work in sports. Okay, there are a lot of different job opportunities within the realm of amateur and professional sports. Do you want to work in a university athletics department as an administrator? Do you want to work for a pro team or a college team as a trainer? Do you want to work in marketing or in the business development side? There are a lot of different job descriptions and a lot of different things that you can do within that industry. It's not just one big collection of jobs. So in a way, it's actually a lot less informative as saying something like, I want to work in sales, or I want to work in marketing, because at least that tells me something about the skills that you're going to be employing on a daily basis. And that is a lot more useful in terms of, what degree should I pursue? What kinds of courses should I take? What kinds of skills should I be looking at developing? That to me is really the big question. Instead of saying where or what industry do I want to work in, you should be asking, what do I want to do? All right. What are the kinds of skills that I expect to be using in a daily basis that are going to add some value for my employer? The other important thing, and this has occurred in a lot of different contexts that I've been in recently, talking to people that are interested in investing in esports, talking to developers that are interested in enhancing the esports appeal of their titles. Esports is not a homogeneous environment. What it takes to make a successful title or to find a successful investment opportunity in the first-person shooter genre is very different than what it takes to be successful in the fighting game community, is very different than what it takes to be successful working with Dota 2 or League, which are two different environments, even distinct from each other. So instead of saying, hey, I want to work in esports, I think you have to be a little more focused, and you have to ask, what do I want to do? Now, something that's going to permeate a lot of this talk is the overarching theme. Your goal as an undergraduate or even a young professional starting out should always be to develop a portfolio of skills that make you attractive to a given set of employers. All right. Instead of saying, I want to work in esports, ask the question, well, what kind of marketing jobs, for example, are there in esports, and what extra skills would help me get one of them? What can I do? So if I'm interested in marketing or in business communications, is there sort of a characteristic of those types of jobs in esports that might suggest an extra skill that I can get in terms of getting an edge in applying for those jobs? Equally important, I'm a hardcore gamer is almost never a job qualification on its own. That is when undergraduates used to come and see me and say, hey, I love esports. I'd love to get a job in esports. That would almost always be what they would lead with. Well, I'm this hardcore gamer. That's great. Okay. That is in many cases a secondary or a preferred characteristic for a lot of these jobs. Experience as a gamer is not experience in esports. And that's very important. Just kind of do with that what you will. It's great that you followed or you have an interest in a certain title. That in and of itself is not going to get you a job. All right. So just to give us a foundation in this discussion, how do I start? Well, I'm going to go on LinkedIn, and which is a site that you should be on if you're not already. And I'm going to type in esports jobs into the search box. I know, very scientific. Okay. First thing that pops up, or that I noticed, was this job that happens to be part-time. It's with DraftKings. It's with a data coordinator. This is actually a 20 or 30 hour a week job that's basically broad data analysis. Okay. You at least have to be familiar with Excel, ideally with some sort of software or statistical analysis package beyond that, but you're working with data. And this is a good kind of entry-level position, even though it's part-time, because it gets your foot in the door working with different types of data, and it's a profile that a lot of people are going to potentially be competitive in applying for. Social media coordinator. So again, you're going to see a little bit of bias as we go on in this. I am obviously an economist by trade, and so I'm going to tell you, yeah, I like jobs in economics. I like economics and business degrees, but this is something that oh, there you go, somebody that does have a more general media background here. This is something that somebody with an English lit or other kind of degree is going to be qualified to apply for. This is an example of a couple jobs. These do come up. All right. These are IT network administrator or accounts payable specialist. Not too sexy. Those are jobs that would be listed with a lot of different firms in a lot of different industries. They happen to be with an esports firms, ESL, who I do a lot of work with and quite like as a firm. But again, these are examples of jobs that different kinds of skill sets would qualify you for that happen to be in the esports industry. So with the acquisition by Activision and the start of the Overwatch League, it's not a surprise right now that Blizzard is doing a lot of hiring, and I think the diversity of jobs in itself is fairly instructive. This first one is this is kind of the dream for a lot of my undergraduates that used to come in and want to talk to me about esports. This is a job where familiarity with esports and being a longtime fan, and that's something that's talked about very prominently. This is very much an entry-level position, and it really is centered around with the release of StarCraft Remastered, Blizzard wants to restart or revitalize the competitive StarCraft scene, which is, you know, one of the first titles that I watched in esports. One of the things that made me get interested in a lot of this different stuff. And this is a very broad job description. So there are occasionally job descriptions in esports that are intentionally very broad. They're gonna interview a lot of different candidates from a lot of different backgrounds, and you should be a lot of you out there should be throwing your hat in the ring for something like this. By and large, though, most of the job opportunities you're going to see are going to revolve around fairly focused sets of skills. And as a young and fast-growing industry, what you'll notice about esports is that a lot of the jobs are going to ask you to wear multiple hats. So this is an example, associate ad operations engineer. This is an example of, I would say it's a primary job in marketing or in business, but it gives very strong preference to somebody that has at least some skill at programming. So it says that Java familiarity in particular is a plus, or a background in applications development is a plus. So this is the kind of thing, very common. So when I used to teach at Chicago, and when a lot of my students were going to work in venture capital or in pharmaceutical startups a little bit before that, a very common theme of those jobs was that they rewarded people that were very excellent in a specific area, but that it had also developed a number of secondary skills like programming or like some communications expertise, familiarity with social media on the side. All right. Player relations coordinator. This is an example of a job. Really, the primary thing here is that you're familiar with esports and you have some degree of fluency in another language. Korean and Chinese are fairly common in terms of the asks here, although I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities in South America, in Spanish-speaking or even Portuguese-speaking countries as well here. And this is not necessarily go learn Korean or Chinese. That's not easy. Go learn French or Spanish. French in particular, I think, is a really good thing if you're interested in potentially working at a firm like Ubisoft or a lot of the other developers. But this is more something that I bring up as if you happen to be from a background where you're already fluent in Korean or in Cantonese, and you're over at a university studying something, this is the kind of job that can get your foot in the door at a firm. It's not always your primary degree that's going to get you that first position in an area. All right. You have to be willing to cast a wide net. And then this is something, if we were talking about the gaming industry as a whole, rather than esports specifically, this is something that we'd spend a lot of time talking about. We talk about sort of the software developer or software engineer jobs and how you check that box. Naturally, the computer science majors are going to have a leg up here, but they're not necessarily going to be the only people. I think programming positions and programming skills, it's something that people think, well, I definitely need to have majored in computer science to have, to apply for these kinds of positions and be successful. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think you can minor in computer science and you can develop your skills in a certain focused area with a language like Java, or with a language that a particular developer has advertised openings for in the past, and you could potentially be successful there even if you're not necessarily a huge hacker. All right. So this is a conversation that I used to have initially with my finance master's students. So when I first started running this master's degree in financial economics program up at Western, I was mostly dealing with students that had come straight out of undergrad, rather as opposed to the MBA students at Chicago who usually worked for a couple of years. And one of the things that I had to do with these students coming directly out of undergrad is talk to them about making the transition between a consumer and a producer mentality. What do I mean by that? Well, you take your average middle or high school student and they're generally thinking about education as a consumption activity. They walk into the classroom, they sit down, and they're going to work on, or they're going to do whatever the instructor puts in front of them. They're going to do whatever homework they're assigned, and that's fine. That's going to get you through most high schools. All right. As a master's student, and as the years went by, it became increasingly clear to me that we'd be a lot better off if we started coaching undergraduates about this. And that's what I started doing as time went on, even as an undergraduate student. Okay. I think you are best equipped for a career when you make the transition as an undergraduate from the consumption-based education model to beginning to look at yourself as a product or a commodity. You are a producer in your educational experience, not a consumer. How can I shape that product myself into something that employers will want to hire? That's your mentality, not I'm going to go into these courses and I'm going to do what I have to get that A on my transcript, but I'm going to go into these courses and I want to develop the set of skills that will best make me marketable to employers. There's a world of difference between those two attitudes. It's not all about grades. Grades help. Don't get me wrong, they're not the end all be all. Most importantly, something that I used to batter into my master's students and eventually even into my undergraduates, academic programs don't prepare you for a career. You prepare you for a career, okay? A degree is not an endpoint, it's a starting point. It's a foundation, all right? I've been very lucky in my life both to work at places like Chicago, at Western, and to be training students for careers that are very professional and very lucrative in terms of the opportunities that they offer. One of the things that all of those different jobs have in common, I've found, is that you don't stop learning. It's not a binary process where you go to school, you learn as much stuff as you need to know, you stop, and then you go to work and you use all that. No, that's not how it works, guys. Every good job, good career I know of, you continue to learn, grow, and challenge yourself every day. And this is something, even if you're in that crowd of people that may be a couple years out of school, all right? If you are in a situation, there are very few truly dead-end jobs. There are a lot of dead-end people, okay? If you're in a situation, if you're looking at your resume 2 or 3 years into your job, and that resume does not look more attractive to the modal employer in your industry than your resume 2 to 3 years ago. And I'm not just talking about the additional 2 to 3 years of experience. I'm talking about what skills have you developed? What projects have you worked on? What tangible thing can you point to that says, I'm somebody that you want to hire? If you're not adding those things to a resume, all right, as you're going along, you're doing it wrong, all right? You are not your job, okay? Your job is a part of you, but you always need, there's this old saying, right? That you don't dress for the job you have, you dress for the job you want, okay? You never work for the job that you're in right now. Do a good job at your current job, but always be working toward the next thing that you're trying to achieve. That in mind, it is never, guys, I'm talking to you sophomores out there. It's never too early to network. Get on LinkedIn. Connect with your professors if they're on there. Connect with recent grads of your program that you might have met, okay? That senior that was your TA last year and he's going to work for Goldman or whatever this year. Go try and connect with him if he'll add you, if he remembers you, okay? Those speakers, all right, that come and give talks on career night or whatever else, some alumni presentation at university, go to that stuff and ask people to ask if you can add people to LinkedIn or follow them on Twitter or whatever. Hey, how can I keep in touch with you? You know, can I send you an email with some questions? Form those connections, and that should be something that you're actively doing starting very early in your university career. Those resources and those opportunities are as important as the resources that you're being given or that you're being offered to develop your skills inside of the classroom. Always keep in mind, one of my old colleagues at Western used to like to say this to undergraduates, it is very difficult to do anything to your career at 22 years old that is fatal, okay? Yes, there are things that you can do, don't do them, especially guys, okay? But most of the time, most people out there are not doing now what they've been doing, what they were doing 5 or 10 years ago that are successful career professionals. All right. I used to tell this to people about the finance industry all the time. That industry is very dynamic. It's changing. Esports is the same way. Okay. Initial conditions matter. You do want to prepare yourself and work towards getting the best first job that you can. But again, you always want to be more than your current job. Mobility matters more. You always, even if you're very happy at your current job, you should always have that resume to the point where you could apply and be successful for a better job than you have now. All right. That said, I've emphasized diversity. I've emphasized that there's no one degree that's going to, quote, get you a job in esports. There are some skills that never hurt. All right. Programming, I think, is the big one. You can be a filthy casual like me, at least learn some HTML. It doesn't have to be pretty. I made myself a web page as an undergraduate because I felt like it. I maintained, through the first part of my career, I maintained my own course web pages. I think I used Word a lot as an editor, which sucks. But again, it doesn't have to be pretty, okay? That's one of the big things, you know. Your familiarity with a lot of these things, it doesn't have to be a course that you took. It doesn't have to be, you know, I know everything there is to know about this area. Just showing that you have some familiarity with a thing and that you use this for a project. Okay, don't be embarrassed about that. Nobody knows everything when they're applying for jobs. A lot of times, my undergrads are coming out, they're like, well, you know, I used Java or I used HTML or I did something. I used this program to do this project in a course, but I don't really know it that well. I'm not really familiar. Okay, be open about that, but don't be embarrassed by it. Nobody, when they apply for their first couple jobs, knows everything. And familiarity, showing that you are capable of developing your skills in a particular area, can be as important as having an attractive set of skills in a given area. All right. Communication is for programming, look at how much you need for a minor in computer science. That's one thing in terms of a degree element. That's one thing that I think is never going to hurt you. All right. Communication, verbal and written. I taught a bunch of engineers back in my MBA teaching days. And I used to try and convince my math guys and my engineering students, look, you know, you're all geeks like me. We're cool. I get it. All right. Instead of taking that third course on stochastic processes or that second course on deterministic optimization, go think about taking a class in public speaking. Okay. Think about taking a class in basic marketing. All right. Diversify your skill set and such that you are going to show employers that not only do you have desirable analytical skills, but that you can function well in a business environment. All of us, all right, whether we're hiring for academic jobs, private sector, government, whatever, all of us want to hire people that are going to be good colleagues, all right? Signal that you're going to be a good colleague, all right? All of these skills, by the way, that we're talking about, these are not just things that you have to develop in a classroom. These are skills that you can develop on your own, All right, seek out classes with group work and presentation components so that you can say, yes, I've stood up in front of people and presented this project, all right, in this particular area. I know how to make PowerPoint slides and get a point across, all right, especially in the back end of your third year and your fourth year, all right. I know when I was an undergraduate, at least, I hated classes that had term papers, but guess what, all right? If you are actively developing your skills like I'm suggesting, that term paper, that course project, all right, that can be a deliverable. That can be something that you can talk about in a job interview, all right? I always tell them, I used to tell my econ students, okay, when you get asked a question about, say, GDP growth, all right, in a job interview, all right, a lot of people think that the best answer is a textbook definition of GDP growth or regurgitating a line from your econ class about GDP growth or quoting some famous economist. All right. The better answer, much better answer is, well, hey, you know, actually, I did a project about that in a course last semester, and it was, you know, it was pretty simple, but here's what data I used or worked with. And by the way, I read something about that in the Wall Street Journal last week. It was interesting. You know, some major economist had this take on it. A good job interview is a conversation, okay? As much as anything else, your goal in a good interview is demonstrating a degree of fluency in a particular field over and above the minimum basic skills required to contribute to an employer in that field, all right? That fluency is very important. I used to tell my econ students, form study groups and don't just discuss the problem sets, okay? Do your problem set, but also talk about what was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that day, all right? That fluency, those communication skills, they are a skill that you work on over time. Not every skill in your undergrad experience is developed in the classroom. Again, programs don't prepare you, you prepare you. These last two are perhaps my bias, but I would strongly suggest that you cannot go wrong taking a class and developing some skills in statistics or data analysis. I used to tell my undergraduate econ students, for goodness sake, if you want to get the most out of your econ or business degree, take a class in statistics, econometrics, data analysis, what have you, early in your second year. And for the remainder of your econ education, use data use real world data whenever possible with whatever problem possible. We have a lot of data. We have the Federal Reserve economic database for macro. We have BLS and other sources for more microeconomic data, but ask your professors, hey, you know, this problem set, it's great. I did the math, I solved the problems, but can I do this with actual data? This project, hey, where do I go? Instead of just writing a review of a book or something, you know, where do I go to get some actual data? Can I make a chart or a graph that illustrates this point? Those are the kinds of things that I think a lot of employers work for. You should at least know your way around a spreadsheet if you're applying for any kinds of these jobs. Yes, I'm biased. I think everybody should take a class in microeconomics or basic business. That's probably more of the econ professor talking. But by and large, there are a lot of degrees, as I hope you've seen, that are going to prepare you. You know, media or marketing degrees are fine. Communications degrees are fine. But those degrees, all right, it's not that an econ degree is better than a degree in marketing or communications or even English literature, okay? What it is that the econ major tends to have developed more skills that are relevant to a broader set of high-paying positions, all right? You can major in something else. You can't, but you have control over developing some of those skills. Be looking at job openings, be looking at the kind of skills that they're asking for or requiring. And even if it requires either taking a course outside your major or doing something that may not be germane to any of your classes at the time, go and do that thing. Develop those skills actively on your own, okay? That, to me, that's the best mentality that I can put you in going forward, all right? If you skipped straight to the slide, you probably missed a lot of the point of what I had to say. Nonetheless, since this is the big question that a lot of people are going to be asking me, I feel compelled to give an answer. I may be biased here, but I don't think you can go wrong with a degree in undergraduate business, economics, marketing, etc., with a minor in computer science. Okay, if you were asking me, how do I get into esports? How do I prepare myself for the broadest array of good esports jobs possible. That's where I would start. Obviously, follow the competitive scenes that you're interested in. Be active on LinkedIn, not only trying to connect with people, but keep a watch on those job boards. Look at, hey, if I graduated now, what are the jobs that I could apply for, and what skills do I need to acquire between now and the time I graduate to apply for some of those that I want to have. All right. Just because somebody asked me specifically the other day, an engineering degree from a good program is never a bad thing. All of us, I've done master's and PhD admissions in addition to a little bit of hiring consulting on the other side of things. All of us, okay, in academia, private sector, government, what have you, we're trying to hire problem solvers. We want people that can get things done, all right? And an engineering degree, from good programs anyway, most engineering degrees are degrees in problem solving. And even if I don't necessarily want, like we at Chicago Booth, for example, we would take a lot of people with mechanical or electrical engineering backgrounds in our MBA programs, largely because not necessarily they were going to know all the economics or finance or whatnot required coming in, but because we knew that these people were strong problem solvers. And once we gave them the basic ingredients of training in economics or finance, that they'd be able to take those and run with them and apply them to solve problems. Okay. Probably the smartest thing I did, all right, in my time at Chicago as an instructor was I used to ask the students that would come back to me for doing recruiting of the current crop of students on campus. I used to ask them, hey, what could I have done better, or what could I have done differently in my course? And one of the big things that they used to tell me is, we want to hire people that can sit down and be productive on day one, okay? Most jobs are going to involve some kind of training period, all right, where they familiarize you with the particular software, the particular way they do things at that company. If you can sit down and you can be productive for them even during that training period, that gives you a huge leg up. That's, again, where knowing how to work with data, knowing how to work as a part of a team, familiarity with basic programming skills, those things all come into play, make it more likely that you're going to be able to do something useful to contribute to your firm early on in your employment. And trust me, a lot of employers would rather hire somebody that doesn't necessarily fit those job qualifications on that outline perfectly, but that they're sure can contribute, all right, to their firm right away, as opposed to somebody that has that sterling, super polished resume, but most of their skills look like they're on paper, that they've never been put into practice, that they're not really comfortable working in a team environment or conversing with other people in their field, all right? Be the person, be the problem solver, okay? Focus more on what your resume says that you can do. Your resume is more important as far as communicating what you can do than it is advertising what you have done. A lot of students look at a resume or a CV, what have you, as an advertisement of your past accomplishments, okay? It is much less important in that respect than it is as an advertisement for you on what you're capable of doing, the skills that you've already developed and are interested in continuing to develop, all right? The last thing, I got this as a reply to one of my Twitter posts recently. I thought it was really good advice. Start small, okay? Be annoying, all right? Don't stalk people, but send emails, form connections, look for internships. When you're looking for internships as an undergraduate, even a high school student, don't worry about perfect fits. As an econ major, you don't have to have an economics internship. Look at them as complementary pieces. Again, opportunities to diversify or develop skills, opportunities to form relationships at a particular firm, okay? If MLG has an opening as a social media manager, and you're somebody that is active on Twitter, have a good idea of how to post things that people like, even if you're not interested in a career in that, consider applying for that kind of an internship just to form these connections, to get some experience in the space. Reach out, ask questions, send emails, all right? Lots of people in very successful business jobs will tell you that they never expected to be where they are. Just as many, probably most of them, will tell you that they never could have predicted exactly the path that they were going to take to get there, okay? You are more important than your resume. You should always be more than the current job that you have. And all of your focus, be it during your education or during your professional development, should be making you the best prospect, the most skilled person that you can. All right. Thank you guys for listening. I'll be back in 2018 with more of the stuff that you like. Happy New Year.